first came to my attention way back in 1967 when he joined Procol Harum. The band had just achieved massive success with their very first single, A Whiter Shade of Pale, and Robin joined the band soon after. Procol Harum were unique, a band that definitely walked to the sound of their own drum. They revolved mainly around the songwriting duo of Gary Brooker and Keith Reid. Reid wrote the lyrics and Gary Brooker moulded them into songs, very much like Elton John and Bernie Taupin. You never knew what you were going to get from Procol Harum, whether it be psychedelic rock, blues rock, art rock, progressive rock, classical rock. They did it all. And while Trower was in the band, they produced 5 great albums. Procol Harum from 1968, Shine On Brightly, also 1968, A Salty Dog 1969, Home 1970, and Broken Barricades in 1971. And while Robin's contributions to those albums was brilliant, he even chipped in a few songwriting credits of his own along the way. I always got the feeling that he was a little frustrated, a little held back. You can see Robin's heart was in the blues, and while he adapted to all the weird and wonderful musical journeys that Procol went on, he often had to duel it out with piano and organ, and he was like, you could see that he was frustrated. He just wanted more time to express himself. And surprisingly, Robin didn't devote too much time to practice. He says, and even while I was with Procol Harum in those early days, the only time I would see my guitar was either when I walked on stage or in the studio. That's how serious I was about it back then. In fact, it wasn't until he met Bob Fripp in 1968 that he began to practice seriously. He says Fripp gave him some finger exercises which he worked on for about a year, and they really helped. Also, given Robert's cast iron discipline, especially around practice, I'm sure he would have advised Robin that to stand out from the hordes of fantastic guitarists back then in late 69, 1970, he would have to up his game. In 1970, coincidentally a few days after Jimi Hendrix's death, Procol were on tour with Jethro Tull, and Martin Barre, Jethro Tull's guitarist, had a 1962 Stratocaster. Just to see how it felt, Robin plugged it in and immediately knew this was the missing piece in his evolution as a top player. He tried out various Strats before, but he never really connected to them. But he felt this was the guitar for him. In 1971, the classic Procol Harum album Broken Barricades found Robin spreading his wings a bit and starting to come more into the limelight. Take a listen to tracks like Simple Sister, Playmate of the Month, and Robin's tribute to Jimi Hendrix, Song for a Dreamer. Soon after Broken Barricades, Robin left the band and he formed a short-lived band called Jude, which had Frankie Miller on vocals, Stone the Crow's bassist, singer James Dewar, and ex-Jethro Tull drummer Clive Bunker. The band were very short-lived and never recorded, keeping Dewar on as lead vocalist and then pulling in drummer Reg Isidore. They formed the Robin Trower Band, and they released their first album in March 1973, twice removed from Yesterday. Sadly, I have to admit, the album at the time passed me by. Back then, you could buy 3 albums a week and still miss out on classic albums that seemed to be released every week. But this all changed in June 1973 when Robin supported Jethro Tull at their infamous 2 nights at London's Wembley Empire Pool, where Tull decided to play the whole of A Passion Play. Now, Tull's concerts, those 2 concerts, were savaged by the music press at the time, though the thousands of fans did give the band standing ovations on both nights. Hardly anyone in the music press mentioned the support act, the Robin Trower Band, who were quite simply stunning. Robin from somewhere had found this magical tone, drenched in sustained feedback and various effects. With a rhythm section laying down a wonderful foundation, Robin just took flight, Standing there watching the expressions on his face, you could see that he felt every note. Every note was drenched up from his soul. It was all about soul and feel. Robin Trower had arrived. The half-full arena, full of milling around people, milling around with their drinks, talking to each other, quietened and listened. And for the next few years, Robin blazed a trail around the world with his unique brand of psychedelic blues. Sure, it was Hendrix-based, but it was far from a poor imitation, as some critics would have you believe. For a few glorious years there in the mid-70s, Robin Trower was on it, most definitely, right in the groove, knocking out one great album after another and one sellout tour after another. Meeting up with his old pal Robert Fripp in 1974, Robert said this: "Robin Trower is one of the very few English guitarists that have mastered all the bends and wobbles, but with an instinctive knowing of their effective power. But they went on to live inside his hands. It is the rare English guitarist who has been able to stand alongside American guitarists and play with an equal authority to someone grounded in a fundamentally American tradition." Robin has been widely criticised for his influences. This has never bothered me. I toured America in 1974 with 10 Years After top of the bill, King Crimsons second and Robin Trower bottom. The chart positions were opposite. 10 Years After in the Billboard 160s, Crimson in the 60s, and Robin Trower climbing remorselessly through the top 20. Nearly every night I went out to listen to him. This was a man who hung himself on the details, the quality of sound, nuances of each inflection and tearing bend, and abandonment to the feel of the moment. He saved my life. A lot of rockers I find aggressive and uptight, but Robin has spirit from the heart and a measure of control. The rock and roll business is constructed on wholly false values, impermanence and mainly pernicious, though not in an obvious way, so it is great to find a musician not affected by it. Robin: "I tried to give Bob some lessons on how to do my kind of thing, but musically we were worlds apart, and never the twain shall meet, as they say."